we're not going to talk probably at all about the Texans and Titans, even though the Titans are just 1.5 point favorites over the Texans on Sunday. Houston beat them last year once, almost beat them in that game at NRG Stadium, and there would be nothing more enjoyable to me than to see the Texans take the Titans down on Sunday because I hate their fan base. In case you've just tuned in, I'm just going to explain in a nutshell why I hate Titans fans the way that I do. They have come after me 3 times for reasons that I honestly cannot understand. Number one, they came after me when I broke the news that Jake Locker was being benched for Zach Mettenberger before the Texans-Titans game. I don't know why they came after me for that. Who cares? I got actual threats for that, and I was called not a real journalist because I decided to double-check my source, who turned out to be, I don't know, Jake Locker's dad. No big deal. You find these things out sometimes in weird ways. It was the first time I'd ever broken a news story, and everyone was coming after me for days and days and days, and I was like, sorry? And then I ended up being right, and everyone was like, he didn't report the news the right way. And I was like, suck my, you know what? It pissed me off. Sean, you were about to say something.
Yeah, it's just a funny QB controversy where it's Jake Locker and Zach Mettenberger, and they're like, F you, Paul.
That pissed me off. People were coming after me so hard. And like Titans beat writers and stuff too. The next incident I had with Titans fans, back in 2018, maybe it was 2017, I went on the air with the morning show on 610 and I was like, yeah, Marcus Mariota's not good. And then I listed all the quarterbacks that I think are better than Marcus Mariota. Titans fans are sensitive dimwits, and they saw that, and they got mad that I put Marcus Mariota at 19th. Honestly, that was too high in retrospect, right? It was. They got super mad at me, threats, etc., etc., etc. On brand, sensitive fan base, gets mad when they're not talked about, even though whenever they actually do something relevant, they generally will blow it against a team that's worse than them or lose in epic fashion in the playoffs, like the 3 times that they were the 1 seed and were one and done. That is the Titans' history in a nutshell. And the 3rd time was when I got pissed off last year. This is while I was still in Seattle, about how the Oilers week the Titans were throwing seemed a little bit aggressive. They were like, hey, what's your favorite Oilers memory? It's like, bleep off. And they were talking about how, yeah, we own the Oilers throwback uniforms. So I tweeted about it, wrote about it, did a podcast about it. This is when I was unemployed because I was mad about it. I was like, you guys don't own this team's history. You shouldn't own this team's history. And basically, Titans State media paid a bunch of Titans players, ex-Oilers players to say like, yeah, we like that the Titans welcome us. And to their credit, they do. I will give Amy Adams Strunk credit. At the very least, even though her dad took this Oilers team out of town and left us with this redheaded stepchild known as the Houston Texans, who eventually came into our lives, she at the very least has honored those Houston Oilers players. That does deserve some credit. Because at the same time that Bud Adams holding Houston hostage for a new stadium was lame, like it's understandable too. The Astrodome, I'm assuming, for those who were still going to it, was running out of gas. It probably was not the most enjoyable experience to go to in the 90s as far as for an Astros game compared to what Minute Maid Park was as opposed to what NRG Stadium is. I imagine there's some nostalgia there, but like more effort has been made to keep the Astrodome alive than to keep the actual Oilers in town. If you go back in time, like the city was kind of like bleep off. So it's both parties that are involved here as far as that team leaving town. You know, you can't, it's not as easy as just blaming it all on Bud Adams, at least based off of what I've read. But it does bother me that in town, there was no effort whatsoever to try and keep the Oiler colors, uniforms, or history. That is a massive failure by this city. And the people that it bleeps over are all of those guys who played for the Oilers here in town, who never will get to be honored in a way that they properly should be. They have to go to Tennessee and be honored at halftime of a game where no one ever saw these guys play. That pisses me off about it. Hey, we're going to bring Earl Campbell out at halftime of a Titans game. Like, just think about how messed up that is. No one in Tennessee was paying attention to the NFL when Earl Campbell was in the league. Same thing for Dr. Doom, Warren Moon, all of the guys who played here in Houston. that get honored in Nashville, it sucks. And it is just as much on this city as it is on the actual Titans ownership and on Bud Adams. Because you can do something about this. The Seattle Sonics did something about this. The Seattle Sonics essentially sued the ownership group that was moving the team to Oklahoma City so that they would never be able to wear the Sonics throwback uniforms or own the Sonics history. When Seattle gets a basketball team back, and it's been a damn long time, they will get to keep that team name. They will get to keep their team history. Here in Houston, you lost the history. You lost the coolest throwback uniforms that there are that the Titans barely wear, and every now and then they like flaunt it. Hey, we're your ex-girlfriend. We kept all of your clothes, and we're going to wear them. We kept all your hoodies, and we're going to post pictures on Instagram with us in those hoodies. That, to me, pisses me off about it. I don't like how the Titans flaunt it, but it is partly on this city. And yet, this city still continues to keep that Astrodome alive, and they didn't keep the Oilers in town. Sucks. Ed Emmett, wrong priorities, bro. Anyway, 713-780-3776 to call in. That's how you text in, too. Just wanted to get that off my chest. We're not going to talk any Texans-Titans because the Texans have to earn our time back. I sat Sunday at Allegiant Stadium in Vegas watching the game, and I'm just thinking to myself, damn, like I miss the Seahawks. Even though Seahawks fans were douches to me often, even though I was right about Russell Wilson all that time, like I miss a good football team. I miss when this team was even like borderline good. Instead, what we have is a team that's just so damn far away. They don't deserve our time, and it makes me miss the idea of what the Houston Oilers were. And I think most people here are like, screw the Oilers. They left town. And honestly, rightfully so. I just think that Houston did a bad job not keeping the team's nickname, the team's history in town, and it screwed over all of those players who gave people great memories in this city, especially back in the late 70s and early 1980s, and hell, in the early 90s too, though, you know, obviously 93, not so fun. Because even with the World Series going on, the game on Sunday is the one that I am most excited about every single year for the Texans, mainly because I just like to walk through the crowd to see all the Titans fans and wonder which ones are from Tennessee. And the answer is generally none. They're usually all holdover, Houston-based Titans fans who, for whatever reason, like the team because they had Vince Young for a couple of years. Oh, well, they drafted Vince Young, and the Texans drafted Mario Williams instead of Reggie Bush or Vince Young. I became a Titans fan that day. They left you, dude. They left you. As brought up by Largo Bot, Bud moved the team after they agreed to give him millions worth of renovations to the Dome in '88. The real approach should have been, let's build a new stadium, though, right? I mean, they had to notice after a while, wow, this thing looks ugly. I mean, it's next to NRG Stadium, looks like a herpes sore. It does. It is a gross-looking building. I hate it during the Houston Rodeo. Like, you got to walk around that thing. It's in the middle of the fairgrounds. It makes it impossible to walk around. How much more space would they have to walk around there if that was there? There's a bunch of choke points, and it's because the stupid Astrodome is just there. Pisses me off.
It honestly, like, whenever I see it, like, in the overhead shot during the CBS game that they do where they're like, we're here, and, you know, NRG Stadium, I always see it, and it always just makes me sad.
It looks
I'm always just like, man.
You're right, Sean. It looks like a giant fuel drum. It does. You know, like those ones that you'll see, whether you're driving to Sealy on the Katy Freeway, and
Or
there's
Deer
those ones.
Park, Pasadena.
Yeah. It's like, okay, there's a oil drum outside here. It's really big. Like, that's what it looks like now. Because it's so much smaller than NRG Stadium, too.
If they did something with it, like if there's just something going on inside that building,
No.
it would be worth it. But like at this point, I'm like,
They've been trying to make something happen in it, and like they've wasted all sorts of time and resources on it. Ed Emmett, who was the Harris County judge, once called into my show because I called him a boob on the air for his obsession with this. He's like, it's like Captain Ahab with the white bleeping whale. Let's keep the Astrodome alive. Let's turn it into a historical monument. Let's turn it into a convention center. I'm sorry. Who wants to hold a convention down there? That part of town, not a fun part of town. It's annoying that the rodeo is down there. I would love there to be some sort of Central Park area in Houston where that's where the rodeo is. Instead, it's in a parking lot outside of a stadium. Okay, I get it. There's a lot of convention areas there. That one makes no sense to me. They should have just gotten rid of it. People voted to get rid of it. They kept it, and this city put up more of a fight to keep that old piece of concrete here than to keep the history of a football team that was essentially the embodiment of what this town was in the 70s and the 80s. They were fun. They lived hard. They partied hard. You had Dan Pastorini. You had all sorts of cool players that were playing for that team back in the day, and you lost all of that because you put in no effort just to keep the history here, and you screwed over a bunch of players along the way. Bruce Matthews is the only one who keeps it real on that, by the way. You might see a bunch of players that used to play for the Oilers on the Titans website again saying like, oh, yeah, we were happy about this. Like that we consider the Titans to be where we played for. No, they didn't. They're saying that because they're being paid to say it. These things happen in life. I'm not expecting a guy who's in his 60s or 70s to stand up on a soapbox and say, like, I demand that we be respected in Houston. He's probably given up. Interesting comments on the twitch.tv/ESPN975. I'm not entertaining your Astrodome alternatives. We used to do this on Gallant at Night as a joke back at the flagship. Not doing that anymore. Nope. Hey, let's turn it into a skateboard park. Hey, let's turn it into a bike park.
We almost ventured into that territory in this segment.
We almost did.
I'm glad you pulled the reins.
No,
back.
I'm not doing that. Listen, this show is ADD, but the idea that Brian Straw and I, my co-host at the time, had was that you turn it into a Thunderdome and you drop a bag of. We might have invented Fortnite and Call of Duty Warzone because we had the idea of you drop a bag of cash in the middle of it, have cameras everywhere, and the last person alive wins the bag of cash. Squid Games also probably took a page or two from us.
And WWE Money in the Bank.
Yes, all of those things. They ripped us off. But there is a good idea on the Twitch before we move into Jimbo Fisher's all-time spin zone. Other than aren't Titans fans cannibals from Enfuente's Respector? Yes. They eat squirrels too. Do they have internet? I don't know. Rocket Top. Largobot suggested this. Amy Adams would be willing to sell the Oilers' IP back to Houston to help finance her new stadium. McNair is the dumbass who hasn't made an offer for it. Battery Chucker says, don't think McNair cares that much. I don't think that's true, that first part. I like the possibility. I like the proposal. Here's the thing. I think actually Cal McNair would be willing to trade for it now. I think that Cal McNair finally gets that this city has been as dissociated with its football team, its NFL team, as possible. Like, the Texans have never been Houston. They never have been. They hate to feel that way, but it's true. They've never embraced the city. I know this as someone who took time to embrace this city. Eventually, you got to know the city's history. You got to learn about it. You got to embrace the many different cultures that make this melting pot up. I mean, what? It's a majority Hispanic city. What have they done on that front? You go to a Texans game. If you take a look at the demographics, there's a ton of Hispanic people that go to that game, and it's almost like, oh, but we're only going to acknowledge like the white ones. That's the vibe I've always gotten from it. I'm not trying to call them racist or anything like that. It just feels like they have always catered to like 22% of this city. And now all of a sudden, I think they realize that, and I will give them credit. They've made a good effort to try to bring other people in because the team sucks, but it's taken them too long. They should have done this from the get-go. And I do think that if that actually was on the table to buy the Oilers history, maybe not so much, but to buy the Oilers uniforms, I think that they would think about it. But I also think that Amy Adams-Strunk realizes that those throwbacks are bleeping sweet, and that's a moneymaker for her.